became pilot officer. Got 3 Ju-88s before being shot down. Crashed into sea, 3 days on raft. Picked up okay? Oh, fine. Uh-huh. Yeah, grand news for his folks at home, that. What? Oh, DFC as well. Oh, great. Okay. Right, so long.
Morning, Chief. Anything for me?
Yes, this. More kind words from the big shot in Toronto.
The big shot, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what's in his mind. Let's see. Send story on cooking for the million. Can you beat that? When there's a war on in Russia, China, Italy, the Pacific, all over the world, he has to cable for a story on grub. Grub, I ask you.
Just read that cable again, brother. The story you'll notice is not grub, but cooking.
Look, do you think you could take time out to explain the difference between food and cooking?
Oh, you figure it out. Hey, Shorty! How do they cook for the million? Where is it done, and what lies behind large-scale cooking?
Well, organization, I suppose.
Sure, organization plus electricity.
Electricity, eh? Say, maybe that's the angle to start on. But, boss, just one more thing. Where do you think I ought to go first to find organization plus cooking for the million plus electricity?
Why, where they cook, of course.
Oh, yeah. Where's that?
In a kitchen.
So I went to see kitchens, and one of the first kitchens I saw was in a school. My first impression was, there's something missing here. What is it? And then I realized there were no chimneys and no flues. It was an electric kitchen. Even the water was heated electrically in a big storage heater. Some of the women working in the kitchen were not young, but they worked with the latest pieces of electrical equipment, discarding without reservation the older methods of cooking in which they'd been brought up. They enjoyed working in a place that was free from dirt and always cool in summer. As an example of that, I saw one woman even put her hand on top of the oven. I was amazed till I realized that it was quite cool. The heat's where it's wanted, inside the oven. And while I watched the school dinners being cooked, the voice of the manageress was explaining things to me.
That's the 3 heat switch. Full on like this when you want to get full heat quickly. Medium for heating slowly. And low, well, you use that to maintain the heat already in the oven.
And then we had a look at some of the food that was being dished up for these kids. Vegetables, and then roast meat. Golly, they must have known I was coming. And suet roll, one of my own particular weaknesses, by the way. Many a mother knows what it's like to have one fatty child. But here they were cooking for 500 children. And quite apart from questions of diet values, which I found have all been carefully worked out, it all looked so appetizing. It's not easy to achieve this when you're cooking on a large scale, but in the electric kitchen of this school, they had certainly done it. I didn't spend all my time in the kitchen side of the serving hatch. I went out into the school hall and saw for myself some of the kids and the teachers who were being catered for. They were a cheerful sample out of about 1.5 million children who are being fed every day in schools all over and feeding. There's no doubt these kids are thriving on it. Electrical equipment in the school kitchen is an assurance to...
They're going to have a big social influence. They'll give women freedom to live a full life in the world as individuals, while their children are being looked after for the midday meal. At the moment, there are only a few such schools in the country, but there are going to be many more. This will be one of the most important feeding jobs that Britain has ever tackled.
And then we went back to her office and she helped me sort out my ideas a bit.
It's going to take a bit of time, isn't it, this changeover to electric cooking in schools and such places all over the country?
Oh, I don't think so. You see, it's so flexible.
How do you mean, flexible?
Well, doing away with flues and chimneys makes it very easy to fit up an electric kitchen in any existing building.
I see.
A room in a school. A room behind the stage of the village hall or institute. Or in an existing kitchen of a large house which is being converted into a day nursery, for example.
I see that, yes.
Then I went to a factory kitchen where they provide food for 3,000 workers. First I saw the potato peeler. It could deal with 1.5 tons of potatoes every day. Then they go to the steamer that holds enough to supply the needs of 600 people. Close at hand was the machine which looked after the chipped potatoes. In this kitchen, I found the equipment grouped rather like the assembly shops in a factory. Here, for example, was the electric fryer which coped with enough potatoes to satisfy 600 people every hour. And then I left the vegetables and went on past a line of ovens. The day I was there, hundreds of portions of steak pie were coming out of one oven and joints were coming out of the next. They told me that the first was a double oven range and the other was a cabinet roasting oven. And the joints I saw represented 1,000 helpings. Then I passed on to have a look at the sweets being prepared. The next section, as it were, in this planned sequence of cooking. There was an electric mixing machine in this kitchen, which was equally useful for the preparation of the perfect batter. The same machine makes the breadcrumbs, mashes the potatoes, then minces the meat, and, of course, is quite capable of doing the same thing, the same mincing job with vegetables. However, on the day I was there, I saw a sweep sufficient for 1,400 people coming out of the ovens. The same type as the roasting ovens, by the way. The meals were apportioned on the plates and kept hot in a very practical way. The plates, separated by aluminium rings, were stacked one on top of another and placed in electric hot cupboards conveniently next to the serving hatches, where they were kept piping hot. Of course, it's just as important to keep uncooked food cool as to keep cooked food hot. Refrigerators are vital in a canteen of this size, where wastage due to tainted food or the possible injury to the health of the workers are equally unthinkable. Oh, and by the way, one interesting point I noticed was that apparently you can cook with an electric oven switched off. Several ovens I noticed were loaded with sweets, and while the thermometers still showed heat left from the previous batch of cooking, the switches were turned off, and the ovens went on cooking for an hour and a half without any current being used. That's because the ovens are almost airtight and insulated so that the heat can't escape. You pay for an hour's heat and get 2.5 hours in exchange. And when you're cooking for the million, that amounts to a very great saving indeed. Not only is electricity economical in this way, but it was also pointed out to me that because electricity cooks without flame, there must be longer life for both equipment and utensils. Consequently, there's also to be considered the great saving in maintenance costs. They demonstrated while I was there that the surface of the hot plates has exact flatness, so that there's no gap where it meets the bottom of the pan. This too is exactly flat, so that it has perfect contact, and none of the heat is wasted. Dishwashing, of course, assumes gigantic proportions in a canteen of this size, but the electric dishwashing machines that I saw wash 4,000 plates in an hour. The mountains of greasy, dirty plates quickly disappear as they're fed into the machine by a girl. They go in at one end and are sprayed by hot, soapy water, and then move forward to be rinsed off by clean, boiling water. They emerge from the other side clean and dry automatically. People are fed. British restaurants, for example. Large-scale cooking is by no means limited to factories and schools. If you add the number of meals served in British restaurants every week to the number served in schools and factories, you arrive at the astonishing total of steaming ovens.
Changing equipment in the kitchen?
Well, there are many different ways, according to the space available and the amount of feeding you have to do. But that's just it. With electrical equipment, you can plan. Take our kitchen here, for example. Look, I'll show you a photograph. Now, as you see, there's plenty of room here, so each operation has its separate block, as it were. Now, steaming here, boiling here, roasting and so on here.
He told me of the kitchen that had been built in their own factory. There was plenty of room for everything. The equipment could be adequately and conveniently spaced out. It really was the latest thing in wartime equipment, allowing for the fact, of course, that it didn't include quite the usual amount of white enamel and chromium plate. He explained to me that due to the centralization of each operation, bulk catering was handled with a minimum loss in time and energy, making it possible to handle 1,000 people at a sitting.
So you feed 1,000 people a day in that canteen of yours, eh?
Well, last week I visited a canteen where they feed 3,000 people a day. And there, the space was limited. And of course, they had to use a lot of equipment, so the layout was something like this. Long and narrow, with practically everything down the center.
With that angle in mind, I went to see this place. It was long and narrow, as he had said, and I could see the whole of it without turning my head. The remarkable thing was that originally it was planned to cater for 800, and it was now feeding 3,000. This was done with the same space and the same staff because equipment had been added as it was needed and where it was needed. Yes, it's definitely been proved during wartime that whether it's to meet a sudden emergency to feed more people than were at first originally envisaged, or whether it's to be the basic plan of a newly modeled kitchen, electricity has a big contribution to make to the problems of large-scale catering. Not merely the younger women, but the older women too, recognize that it's cleaner, more economical, more efficient, and saves them labor. And these advantages to the people who have to do the work are reflected also in the factors that have to be considered by those who are planning and financing large-scale catering projects. The problems of communal feeding are ones which the whole community has to face. Britain can't in the future leave these things to chance. They have to be planned, and planning with the aid of electricity is the best way of arriving at a practical result. I discovered that everywhere a cooking job has to be done, there's a piece of electric equipment to do it better. The clock, the double-decker pastry oven, the electric grill, the double oven range, the steaming oven, the hot plate, the fryer, the potato peeler, the plate washer, the vegetable boiler. And I didn't forget that electricity can even go on cooking after it's switched off. So I went back to the office and got on with my story.
Ah, so you're back already, eh?
Oh, hello there, Chief. Yeah.
A story on that cooking for the million angle, I suppose, isn't it?
No story. Have you ever seen a ton and a half of potatoes? Do you know that electricity is the cleanest and the quickest?
Oh, wait, what are you trying to...
And the most efficient?
Oh, now, wait a minute. Are you telling me or asking
I'm
me?
telling you. Now look, just listen. No one could come away from the study of organized large-scale cooking without being, as I am, a partisan of electricity. It solves all cooking problems. Its benefits are as comprehensive as they are obvious.
Well, you've learned quickly, chum, and you certainly got your story.
Organization plus electricity.
You can say that again.